Hi, welcome to the Poultry Keepers Podcast. I'm Rip Stalvey, and together with Mandolin Royal and John Gunnerman, we're your co-hosts for this show, and it's our mission to help you have a happy, healthy, and productive flock. In this special installment of the Poultry Keepers Podcast, we unearth a treasured conversation with Danny Feathers. Our conversation traverses the art of nurturing and showcasing the elegant White Leghorns, a breed that captured Danny's heart and expertise. This interview has become a part of Danny's enduring legacy. The audio captured via a telephone conversation may not boast high fidelity, yet it carries the weight of wisdom and passion. Originally preserved for the American Poultry Association's Educational Archive, it faced oblivion when the site underwent a digital renovation. Against all odds, this interview resurfaced from the depths of a forgotten computer alongside another gem. These recordings, once all lost, will now grace our upcoming podcast episodes, allowing these voices to resonate once more. We invite you to join us in this poignant journey as we relive Danny's dedication to his beloved White Leghorn.
Today, we're talking with Danny Feathers about White Leghorn. Danny, welcome aboard and glad to have you with us.
Thanks for calling me, Rip. See if we can't get some things straightened out.
I hope so. Danny, if you would tell the listeners what attracted you to White Leghorns and you bred them for so many years.
When I was a kid, you'd go to the feed store and you'd get them little old colored dyed Easter chicks. And I'd say 99% of them were male and 100% of them were mean when they finally grew up. But white has always been my favorite color chicken. I don't know, but even though those were layer type Leghorns, they still appealed to me. They were beautiful. About the age of 4, I had a grown one, and he was, like I said, he was mean, and that sucker hit me in the face, just to the right side of my right eye, and just missed my eye about a quarter of an inch. And man, I looked then. And then I started seeing, as I got older, I started seeing exhibition Leghorns and the curves on them. And I just think a Leghorn, period, whether it's white or what color, it's a beautiful bird. I love the lines on them. And so that's what's attracted me to them.
Very good. Danny, if somebody came to you and said, Mr. Feathers, I want to start raising Leghorns, what could you advise me to do? What would you tell somebody to do that wanted to start with Leghorn?
And I don't tell anybody to look in the yearbook at who wins the most or any of that. That's all someone else's perspective. A lot of times I don't agree with what won, but it wasn't my opinion paid for that day. I congratulate them and go on. But I tell somebody to go and find somebody that raises a bird that you like, a style that you like. I used to tell people to get a standard and study it. And I find so many people have a hard time interpreting the standard. Most of them people are going to have to find someone to help them interpret it. I'd say just find a bird that you think meets that description of a bird that you like in that breed, and talk to them people and get those birds if you can get some from them.
Make perfect sense.
The standards are just like the Bible. We're all going to interpret it in a different way. I used to argue with people, they said, the standard is that written description. Yes, it is. But there was a panel of judges that sat on the development of that standard each year, even when they redo them. There's a panel of judges that looked at the artist's rendition, and they agreed. Hey, that's what the standard tells that bird to look like. I still believe that Schilling's work is still the best to go by. And you take a look at his Leghorns, and that's what I try to make my Bannons look like and my large fowl.
And seeing pictures of them, I think you've done a really good job with that, because
when
I see your birds, that's exactly what I see, is a Schilling Leghorn. And I agree with you. His illustrations are the very best out there.
Sure.
How do you breed your Leghorn? What do you look for, and what do you strive for? And how do you try to put those breeding pens together to reach those goals?
And Pete, it wouldn't be fair to the birds that I have today to tell you, unless I tell you how I developed them. The Leghorn, when I was a kid, you didn't find Leghorns, Bannons, Yeah, and had front ends on them, They didn't have a whole lot of plumage. They had long sickle feathers, main sickles, but they didn't have long lesser sickles. I set out to change that, and I put the large fowl, Otto Niehaus, at large fowl in, which he got his directly from me. And we all consider the father of the modern day Leghorn. Before him, they were all looked like cage layers. And so one pen was set like that. The other pen, I happened to find a White Rock Bantam male that had decent front end on him. He was too narrow to be a good rock, in my opinion, but I used him on the other side. And then 7 years in a row, I picked the best offspring, male and female from each side, and bred brother and sister 7 years in a row before I ever started breeding them together. So that's how I started. So what I look for is whenever I put a mating together, I look at everything. I sit down and look at all the males that I'm thinking of breeding. And I take a piece of paper and I write down all the positives on that male. And on the other side, I write down all the negatives on him. I do that with each and every one of them. There's been times I've bred 15 males. And then I do the same with every female. And I'm not talking about just the type of the bird. I'm talking about the earlobe shape, the earlobe thickness, how the beak sits on the head, the type of beak. I look at the feather quality of each bird. I do that with all the females. And then I start matching them birds up on that paper. Where he's strong, she may be weak. Or where she's strong, he may be weak. So I call it a plus minus. But if you get two birds bred in there with the same weakness, you're going to set that as a trait. Like I said, I looked at all kinds of Leghorns. To the very first master breeder, this will probably aggravate some and offend them, but I never was impressed with the rich birds. I never was. I think that I'm out here in the chicken yard, as you can tell. But I think that every Bantam that has a counterpart, we as a breeder should strive to make those birds look like those large fowl. I'm not saying all large fowl look like they're supposed to either. When I was younger, I've seen birds in the Bantam that weren't near as good as birds in large fowl, and then vice versa.
I agree.
But I think when you look at that Bantam, it says it's a miniature, right?
Exactly.
Well, what the miniature is? It's a miniature of that large fowl. I know some guys will argue that the coaching Bantam aren't going to have the head of that large fowl coaching. Why not? The only reason they're not is because you're not trying. Why are some Leghorn Bantams a lot fluffier than what our large fowl are? Why are some large fowl too soft feathered? Because they're not paying attention. Because they don't know any better. They've got them from somebody. He was winning with them. He was the only guy in that area. He was a hell of a conditioner. Therefore, he won on conditioning. That's a real sore subject for me, but we won't go into that today. It's 10 points for conditioning. That's not talking about the feather. That's talking about the body. When I fill in birds, I won't breed a soft-bodied bird, period. I don't want a soft-bodied bird. You can take my Leghorn wings will snap back better than most Old English. In the early days, showing under judges, and you might not have had the prettiest head or prettiest comb on a bird. It may have been full of points, or it may have been, maybe the points were needle points. Back then, hell, they just eliminate the bird altogether. You go up and ask the judge about it. They didn't like his head. How much is that head worth? We're just talking about a small section of it. So you eliminated an otherwise good bird over a small fraction of points.
Exactly.
I got to where, all right, I'll fix that. So I started putting a lot of emphasis on head with not losing type and started producing real pretty headed birds. And then they had to find something else that they were going to knock it for. I had a buddy call me a headhunter one time. He said, "Man, you are a headhunting fool." I said, "Yeah, but is the rest of the bird?" "Oh, yeah." So I look at everything. Eye color, shape of the eye. I'll look at the scales on the leg. There's not a part of that bird that I don't look at. I've judged some birds, county fair wise, and even some of the open that had coarse scales. Look at your standard. What's your standard say about that? It's a no. You shouldn't be breeding that bird. There's not one. If you fix and look at every part of that bird. And when you start fixing everything, and you can't do it all at once, you have to do little pieces at a time. But once you get it all where you think it should be, man, you ought to have a heck of a specimen right there when you're done.
Go ahead.
Some things that a lot of people don't understand is the wing is directly connected to the tail as far as length. If you want a great big long tail, you're going to have a great big long wing. And on a big long wing is a heavy wing. So
And they droop.
They droop. They sure do. And a lot of times I've had people say, look at this bird here. He said his wing crossed, or her wings crossed back behind their rear end. That bird's wings are too long. Is that bird's wing too long, or is that body too short? Reach in there and feel that keel bone. That keel bone is going to tell you a lot. I sent you those 3 pictures last night on out of the standard. And those 3 pictures, in my opinion, are 3 of the most important pictures that any poultry person should have.
Just my opinion, but if folks would sit down and really study what those pictures explain to them and show them, we'd have a lot better birds today than we do.
Oh, I guarantee you would. It goes back to Don Schreider talking about the body under the feathers. And those are the pictures he's talking about. And I learned that before I even knew there was a standard. Rip coming out of the game fowl and understanding the body and understanding the room that needs to be inside that body for all the organs to fit in there properly so that bird can be its most productive.
Exactly.
People get, the thing I see with most people, and we'll talk about Leghorns all day long, they get frustrated if they make a mating and nothing good comes out of it. Hey, I'll tell you what, if people are actually honest, you're going to fail more times than you're successful.
Absolutely.
But every time you do, you should have learned a valuable lesson. And if you're like me and you have a terrible memory, you write that down somewhere. So I got a big old book wrote down. And I got a big book because I didn't want to lose a small one. I forget where I put it. So I've got a big ledger in there.
I have had people ask me, how do you know, or how have you learned as much about chickens as you have? And I said, simple, I've bred a lot of really bad chickens over the years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I started out with some Jim Dandy. I guarantee you, the White Leghorns I started out with the Bantams come from a swap meet. In those days, there were swap meets all over up here where I live and in southern Kansas there. And I'm not too far from Wichita, Kansas, and Wichita had a Bantam club up there. And there were some good Bantam people in there. There was a guy by the name of Joe Burkle. So probably nobody remembers him now as far as the old English people, but this guy was a multi-millionaire. His wife was just absolutely wealthy. He didn't work. He spent all day with chickens. And not just one breed of chickens. He had multiple breeds of chickens. And he worked on everything. He made some of the finest blue Andalusian Bantams I'd ever seen in my life. He was not an easy guy to get to know, but he didn't hardly talk to a kid at all. And I'm just a kid, but I'd step back and watch what he did at the shows and stuff. And so I learned a lot from that. Back then, like I told one guy, I grew up showing his Leghorns. I showed against some old men over at the Enid Club, which is 60 miles southwest of me. And there's 5 old men over there that were old Leghorn Bantam guys. And I'm telling you what, them old bastards was brutal. They didn't have a good thing to say to you. They wanted to demoralize you. They wanted to run you out of chickens. And they weren't dealing with an average person. I grew up Gamecocks. You get that all the time. They just made me try hard, is all they did. And it took me 5 years before I ever beat them. But, buddy, when I did, you don't think I didn't saddle them up and ride down. I rode them hard, and they never beat me again. But I was my own worst enemy because I don't sell a lot of birds. I don't like to let somebody have a bird because I go through and they ask me, hey, I want a trio. I said, and I go through and I pick out birds and I put them together with like I'd breed them. And then I find out a year later, they don't got them no more. They got rid of them shortly after they got them from me. And I don't like that. And when I do sell birds, they're birds that are good enough to stay here. And so I eat all my cubs. Or I've got a guy, I think, ag teacher out at our high school. They got a school farm out there, and he takes a lot of culls from me just to have run loose out there on the farm. And he donates the eggs to the teachers up there to eat and what have you. But he likes Leghorns, and he likes little Rhode Island red bantams. But he takes anything I let him have. I just generally, when I sell something to someone, talk for quite a while. They don't just get the bird; they get my help, because I want them to be successful with them. But it's getting here we're living in a time where nobody wants to work for it no more. They just want instant gratification and move on to the next thing. And I've been in Leghorns since 1970, show type Leghorns. And before that, the buff Leghorns. The large fowl, that was quite an undertaking. That started out as for the original ones I got are cross of a bantam buff Leghorn male and a large fowl white Leghorn female. But I didn't have a good golden buff. It was just kind of a lemon color. They were even, but the standard asked for a good golden buff. That's what I want to try to do. I don't like, well, they're good enough to win. Why worry about it?
I know you posted a picture of one, I think it was last year, maybe. That bird he was not only a good buff Leghorn, he was a good Leghorn, period. He was just a magnificent bird. He was something.
I sat down him and 3 others up there at the APA semi-annual up at Hutchinson, Kansas. And I'd showed some before. I'd showed a cockbird and pullet 6 or 7 years earlier. And the cockbird was by far the best bird. The pullet was a great pullet, but she was a little small. But she had tremendous type. But like I said, again, she was just a head small. But the cockbird was just outstanding. And pullet beat him. I'm thinking to myself, how in the world can that happen? There's just no way that should happen. And since then, I've gotten to where I don't even talk to judges about it anymore. That's something that I'll tell new people. It's all right to go talk to them, but if they don't answer you, you need to know that standard. You need to know what the point cuts are and everything. And if you're a knowledgeable exhibitor and you go to a judge and he can't answer those questions knowledgeably, then you've got a problem. And I don't let judges put my brood thing together. I'm as happy with them when I put them in the cage. I'll be happy with them when they come out, regardless of how they place. But that male was an outstanding male. I was really pleased with him. He had a brother that was almost every bit as good as type, but he came out a lighter, but he was still even. Showed him up there. He was third, and then a half brother was second. This was hair variety. I actually thought that I should have won that Leghorn class, but the judge didn't think so that day, and they paid him for his opinion, and I was fine with it. You don't see many of them, and hopefully we can change that. But I do them the same way. It's still my plus minus. Marcus Davidson, Dan Honor got some of them, and I got some birds from Dan to put in to breed. And Dan's birds were a lot more robust Leghorn, which I really like. A little short thigh, but a great color, great, outstanding bodies. When you get a hold of one, you can look at them in a pen, you'll say, they're a little bit small. When you get a hold of one, they're a little bit big, just like a good Rhode Island Red. Big. Yes, sir. Rhode Island Red, same way. If that Rhode Island Red has got the proper feather, she or he's gonna look small in that pen until you get a hold of them, and then you can say that bird may be just a little too big. But we live in a time where they don't appear to worry about that anymore. I've since crossed the two, and I still keep 3 lines of these going across the line, setting the family now. In my family, then the down our family. But still, it's a Leghorn now. One thing that used to really irritate me was when we look at a Leghorn is defined, really, most people define it by that sweep and through the tail. There's not a break there, right? And then you'll see there's some out there that win they got a break out at the base of the tail, and then the tail kicks up too high, so they got a break right there at the top of the cushion end of the tail. So they've got 2 breaks. And yet they don't seem to understand a smooth sweep without a break.
Thank you for joining us this week. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to our podcast so you can receive new episodes right when they're released. And they're released every Tuesday. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we'd like to ask you to drop us an email at poultrykeeperspodcast@gmail.com and share your thoughts about the show. So thank you again for joining us for this episode of the Poultry Keepers Podcast. We'll see you next week.